Hi, everyone, and welcome to IBTM Connect. My name is Michael Jones, and I am the event manager for IBTM Asia Pacific, part of the IBTM portfolio. Firstly, on behalf of the entire IBTM team, we want to thank you all for attending today's webinar and to pass on our thoughts to everyone that is being affected by this exceptional situation. I would also like to record our thanks for the incredible contribution and sacrifices that are being made every day by the Army of health professionals, emergency service personnel, and volunteers from across the world. To all of them, we say thank you. Our goal at IBTM is to keep this vital industry connected and inspired during these difficult times, which is why you are all here together today. Our speaker today is Dr. Gary Bradt, who is an author and writer on change and leadership. He is both a clinical psychologist and entrepreneur. Gary got his start as a leadership speaker on change when Dr. Spencer Johnson chose him to be the leading speaker worldwide for Johnson's phenomenal bestseller, Who Moved My Cheese? During the next 45 minutes, Gary will be sharing science-backed practices that you can immediately employ on the topic of change, adapting, embracing, and being ahead of it. Thank you for being here. Stay safe, and please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Gary Bradt.
Michael, thank you very much, and let me please add my welcome. It's really fun today. We have people here from all over the world joining us today, many different countries. I happen to be in North Carolina in the United States. And the reason we're all coming together is because together we are going through a global event that I believe I can safely say none of us have gone through before. They truly are unprecedented times, and they present their own challenges, but they also present opportunities. And today I want to cover how can we deal with those challenges and take advantage of the opportunities. My main message I want to start off with is I want you to know you're not alone. Look at my little picture there. We've got people all over the world right now on this call, people who will be watching it later, people in other realms of life. We're all going through the same thing. It's not easy, but together we can get through it. So let me share with you where we are headed today. Well, first off, what I want to do is let's do a little poll. I want to do a little poll because when I said there's challenges, the challenge a lot of it is our emotions. It's a lot of fear. It's a lot of anxiety. So just see if you can take this little poll right here. Just, when you think about your stress level right now, compared to where it was a couple of years ago, it was just totally business as it used to be, not what's going on now. Is your stress level much higher, somewhat higher than normal? It's about the same. And hey, there may be some of you out there going, so somewhat lower. And if it's much lower, I need to talk with you because you got some cool secrets I don't know yet. So let's take a little poll and see what it is. We'll give it a few seconds to pop up. So far we see 75% to 25%. If you'll notice there, nobody is at the same level that they were before. Everybody's feeling a little bit higher. So that's not too surprising, and that is why I'm here. Thank you for giving us those informations. So here's where we're headed. How to manage yourself through change and how to lead others through change. Managing yourself requires controlling, regulating, monitoring, being aware. Leading other people requires inspiring, listening to them, giving them a direction, and in this case, letting them know we can do this. And we'll finish it up with about 10 or 15 minutes of your questions that you may have for me. I'll be happy to take them. Okay, first off, some helpful tips. I'll be providing helpful tips as we go. I'm going to share a lot of information today, and if you just listen, you'll get something. But I encourage you, if you take some notes, and then use the Review 1052. Review 1052 is very simple. You take your notes, and then for 10 minutes a day for the next week, just read over your notes. Don't try to memorize them. Read over them, maybe underline some things, maybe make a few notes to yourself, and do that for 1 week. The next week, read over them for 5 minutes. The next week, kind of glance through them for 2 minutes. By that third week, you are going to have absorbed a lot of this information much better than you will today, hearing it for the first time. And I'm going to give you a lot of ideas of things that you can try. Some of them will work for you, some of them won't. Some of them will work for the person over here, and they won't work for the person over there. So experiment. You try something new. This is not a game of perfect. We're not trying to be perfect here. We're just trying to try some new things and see if we can't help ourselves move on. So, first thing we're going to cover is we're all under a lot of stress. We are all feeling uptight. Not all of us, but most of us are feeling it. And so what can we do about that? Why do we do that? And what can we do about it? All right, so let's take a look. Here's the way it works. And when you're totally at rest, your mind and your body are at rest. However, your mind is constantly scanning for danger that might harm you. And when it does sense a threat out there, you know, is that a snake? Oh, okay, no, it's not a snake. But if we sense a threat, what happens is our body, a bunch of stuff starts happening in our body. We have this little part of our brain that goes, danger, danger. And it says, we better send out this chemical called cortisol. And that tightens up our muscles. And it speeds up our breathing and makes it more shallow. And our blood pressure goes up. And we are ready to either see if it's a tiger over there, I'm ready to fight that tiger, or I'm ready to run away from the tiger. And then once the danger passes, oh, that wasn't a tiger. Oh, that wasn't a snake. Or, oh, I ran away. Then our body and minds have a cool system where another part of your brain kicks in. It calms your blood pressure back down. It gets your breathing back down to normal. And you go back to this resting state. We are designed to be in that resting state most of the time, but our brain is constantly scanning for danger. And the reason why is this part of our brain that's scanning for danger is the most primitive part of our brain. In other words, as our brains formed, as humankind was forming, this was the first part of the brain. So if we were early human beings, the main part of our brain that we had back then was this constant scanning for danger. And I know it sounds a little odd, but when you're feeling stressed and uptight, your mind and your body are actually trying to protect you. Because this is what the stressor was back then, tigers and other, elements in the wild or maybe a neighboring tribe. And if my mind isn't highly attuned to that danger, if I come over here and I'm sort of glancing at the flowers, oh, aren't those pretty? And I don't see the tiger, I see some food over here, I'll become his food. So this part of our brain today operates exactly as it did then. Brain on constant alert, searching for danger, and when it sees it, boom, our body automatically moves into action. So the system is the same, but we don't have tigers today. Most of us, or if they do, they're in the zoo. So we don't have to worry about them. That doesn't mean we don't have a whole bunch of other stressors, though, that our mind, if we're not careful, can turn into tigers. So stressors, traffic jam. For most of us, that's a bit of a stressor. That gets us a bit uptight. Our muscles get uptight. We begin to get the stress response. And these are the stressors. I'm going to list off the stressors, just a few of the stressors that we had before this whole thing came along. These kinds of things were what many of us in business are facing. These are just regular things. But these things by themselves can become overwhelming. And if you notice, I don't even have in there, going to the gym, having a personal life, taking the kids, paying the bills, running errands. It's a lot of stuff. No tigers, but we have all of that. Now, what have we had for the last couple months? To varying degrees to people around the world, we have had working from home. This invisible tiger called a virus. At least with a tiger, we can either fight that thing or we can run away, but this virus is like an invisible tiger. And so it keeps our brain on alert. And now we're working from home, and some of us that have kids, you're trying to teach the kids and take care of the kids, and you're still trying to do your meetings and all that other sort of stuff. And our business model, hey, look at us. We're all in the events industry. I'm a professional speaker. You folks put on meetings and events, and it's a lot. It's a lot, and you can easily end up feeling like that woman there in this picture. Because here's what happens again. Notice there's a step missing in the stress cycle. In times of high stress, the brain is in constant state of alert. and then it's constantly seeing a threat somewhere, and that's leaving the stress response in our body is kind of continual. It's hard to get back to resting. And by the way, folks, if you don't get back to resting, you know the feeling. You get worn out. You get run down. Your immune system isn't as effective. You're more likely to get sick. You're going to be more on edge. So if I've depressed you so far, don't worry. There's good news, because now we're going to talk about what to do about it. I think the overall sense that many are feeling, I know myself, I feel this sometimes, and all this stuff, I'm right there with you. I'm a human being, so a lot of what I'm sharing with you today are things, almost all of it is what I practice myself. And it's because we feel out of control. I mean, this virus, what can I do? Well, there's a lot of things we can do, not about the virus, but how we manage ourselves. And that's what we're going to do next. What to do and how to do it to manage the stress cycle in ourselves. I'm going to give you strategies and tactics. We're going to look at them short term, we're going to look medium term, and long term strategies. Okay, let's start off with very short term strategies, what I call the low hanging fruit. Now, you might look at my list there and go, oh yeah, Gary, I already know that. Sleep, healthy diet, move your body, limit alcohol. But let's just stop and think about this for a minute. We all know sleep is important, but why? Well, last night, I didn't get much sleep the night before, 2 nights ago. And I started the day off pretty good, but by the end of the day, my mind was just mush. My mind just wasn't as sharp as it normally would be. So I made sure I went to bed plenty of early last night. If you don't get enough sleep, you're going to tend to have a lower kind of mood, because part of what our brain does when we're sleeping is it processes our emotions. It kind of cleans out the mess in our system so we can sort of reset our brain, reset our emotions. And if you're not getting enough sleep, you're more likely to be more on edge, a little crankier the next day than you might otherwise be. And when you're sleeping, it lowers your blood pressure. So if you're not getting enough sleep, you're not giving your heart enough time to recover either, because that blood pressure is staying up. So lots of reasons. Now, again, it's not a game of perfect, but yeah, Gary, you don't know. I got this schedule, that schedule. I get it. But there's nobody in charge of your life except you. So you try to do the best you can. There's some nights I don't get enough sleep. I see if I can't make it up some other point. So sleep is number one. Healthy diet, that's pretty straightforward. You want to eat 2-3 times a day if you can, small amounts. Healthy food to the degree that you possibly can. Moving your body is very important. Moving your body, a lot of us, like where I live, all the gyms and places you might go exercise are shut down. But it doesn't mean you have to go to a gym. Moving your body means exactly that. Some people I know, they'll have a timer on their phone to remind them every 2 minutes just to stand up and walk around the room, to kind of move. Because, by the way, when you're moving, that physical movement helps wash out that cortisol, that chemical that causes the stress response. That's one of the reasons you feel so much better after you exercise. So whether it's standing up and stretching, whether it's taking a run, a walk around the block, just make sure several times a day you're moving your body. And then, yeah, we got to take a look at our alcohol intake. I know in the culture where I live here in the United States and in many places around the world, hey, you're stressed, what's the first thing we say? Hey, can't wait to have a drink at the end of the day. And that can be cool. You go out with buddies and friends and colleagues and coworkers and have a drink. But when the stress goes up, some of us are going to be tempted to drink too much to keep trying to wash out that stress. And of course, we know that long term, if you do that too long and too much, all you're doing is depleting your mind and your body of the resources it needs to recover. So we just have to kind of monitor that and try to be reasonable there where we can. Next thing that you can do, real simple, you can start it immediately, you can start it while I'm talking, is know what it is that triggers stress in you. What is it that, for some of us, for me, I don't know why, I can't stand it when I hit a red light. And that, man, I get so impatient or whatever, so I've been working on that one for years of, Gary, that's okay. I know that's a trigger, try to calm myself. It's stupid, but that's what I do. No, other sorts of things might stress you. Know what those stressors are, and then make a plan. Make a plan on how you can avoid those stressors, those triggers for your stress, and perhaps try doing something else. So let me show you what this might look like. I'll give you my plan. I put this plan together at the beginning of when things really started getting bad over here in the States. And it was clear I wasn't going to be doing any speaking events for a while and that kind of thing, and we all had to stay home. So I said, what can I do to limit my stress? Well, one thing I like to do normally is watch the news. I like that. It's fun. We're going through a political season here. However, early on, I started watching the news, reading the news, and oh my gosh, we're all going to die. And it's like, oh, okay. I need to limit that. I need to restrict. I need to cut that way down. I watch the headlines, read here and there. I'm up to date on what's going on and what I need to do to keep myself and others safe. But beyond that, I avoid the news now. When I try to read something, I try to take online courses on happiness or things like this that will help boost my mood. So I'm careful about that. Another thing that I do is, hey, we can't go out and see colleagues. We can't go out and see friends. So like a lot of people, I'm Zooming with family and friends. And the cool thing is, I decided to reach out to people. I've got friends that I haven't spoken to in quite a while, maybe a couple of years, really good friends, but you know how busy you get. And I'm just like everybody else. I let that fall by the wayside. I've had some wonderful hour-long Zoom calls with people I'm thrilled to reconnect with. And early on, I was really feeling overwhelmed, folks, by the anxiety. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so much. I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to set a positive goal that I can work towards. Because when we're doing these sorts of things, we're offsetting that negativity. Notice we're not getting rid of the negativity. We're just taking our focus and putting it on something more positive. So I said, all right, well, what can I do? I said, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to lose that 10 pounds. I've been wanting to lose 10 pounds for I don't know how long. So I'm going to set that as a goal. So I set that as a goal. And guess what? I started moving my body more because that contributed towards my goal. And when I was moving my body more and I was trying to lose the weight, that got me eating a little bit more. And then when I'm exercising and I'm eating the right foods and I don't have the alcohol, I'm sleeping better. So all these things kind of work together. That's the plan I put together for me. It's a simple thing you can do for yourself. You just go to say, okay, what is my plan going to be? And you got to be, this is why self-awareness is important. You have to be aware of what the triggers are. You have to be aware when you're actually uptight. There's some of us running around uptight all day long. We don't even know it. And so you have to kind of begin to learn. What are the bodily symptoms? Does your jaw get tight? Do people tell you your face is turning red? Do you suddenly notice your muscles are tight? Whatever it is. Hey, how did I get myself here? And then put in a plan to avoid whatever those triggers might be for you. Easy peasy stuff that you can do right away that will begin moving you into a more positive direction. Okay, so those are some easy short-term strategies. Now we're going to move into what I call the more medium-term strategies. These are things you can begin immediately, but then you continue them over time. All of this stuff, like the stuff I'm going to share with you going forward, I want you to think about it like getting a workout wherever you go to get your workout, whether it's a gym or a club or outdoors. If your goal is to get healthier and you only do one workout and you never do another workout, you're probably not going to get too much benefit. Or if you do the same workout over and over and over again, the benefits you get are going to kind of tail off. So variety is key, and doing a little bit over time is key. And that's true for these strategies coming up that I'm going to share with you. Okay, Gary, why the donut? What's that got to do with it? Well, that leads to something that I call the donut principle. And no, it doesn't mean you want to be happy, eat more donuts. Although that might not be a bad idea from time to time. Yeah, a few more donuts might add to my happiness. But the donut, when we look at that donut, if I had a donut right now that looked just like that one in my picture, if you had one in your hand, most of us would go, wow, that donut looks delicious. I can't wait to eat that donut. But if you stop and really look at that donut, notice what's right in the middle. It's got a hole in the middle of it. It's missing something. But we don't look at the hole and go, hey, wait a minute now. This donut has a hole. You expect me to eat it? No. We don't. Okay, yeah, the hole's there, but oh, look at all the sweetness and the wonderful dough around it. The donut principle is life works the same way. We all have holes inside of ourselves that we fill up with stress and anxiety and anger. And it's easy. Like if I take, let's see if I can describe this since you can't see me, but if you make a fist, and then you make just a little opening between the front of your fist and the back of your fist, and you zero in on that donut, you can get it to where and you look through with one eye, you can get it to where all you see is the hole. And you think, my gosh, that's, everything is a hole. But then when you begin to open up your fist, oh, no, that hole is in a much broader context with a lot of positive stuff around it. And so the whole idea of what I'm sharing with you today is, yeah, the holes are still going to be there. The stress and the problems in our life will still be there. We need to deal with those. And there's things we can do to train our brains. And that's what we have to do, is train our brain, because our brain is so adept at noticing the dangers and the stressors. We have to train it to focus more on the positives. All right, Gary, cool. How do we do that? I'm going to give you science-backed practices. That means there's research. It's not stuff I just made up. Hey, this would be a good idea. Try this. There's science behind these practices that if you do them, as I said, over time with variety, one thing might work for you, another, again, if we all go to the gym, we're all there to get healthy, but one of you might run on the treadmill, another person might lift weights, another person might do yoga. We all do different things, and then you mix it up over time. You're going to be able to strengthen your brain and increase your positivity. Okay, what are some of those science-backed practices? We're going to start from the smaller ones, easy ones, to ones that are still easy but take a little bit more time and have a lot of power to them. This one, again, you can start this one right now, sitting there wherever you are listening to me. Savor small moments of joy. Folks, there's beauty all around us all of the time. There's goodness in our life around us all of the time. But when we're stressed out, we don't see it. And for somewhat good reason, so we got to consciously see it. Example, little one. Got a woman there, looks like she's savoring her coffee. Excuse me. I don't drink coffee, but I love the smell of the grounds. So I like to make coffee for my wife, because when I do, I just take a few moments to breathe in the smell of those grounds and let that linger in my mind a little bit. And when I do that, what's happening in my brain gives me a little shot of dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical in your brain. It's the pleasure chemical. It's one of those things that makes you feel good. Now, let's expand on this a little bit. We have been taught that if you want to be happy, you'll be happy when? You'll be happy when you get that promotion. You'll be happy when you get the new job. Well, certainly I'll be happy when this whole mess we're in now is over. We'll be happy when we go on vacation. All those sorts of things. And that's true. Those events, your happiness will spike. But guess what? Over time, and not too long a time for most of those things, your happiness kind of goes right back down to the level. So it's not the events in the future that will make us happy over the long term. It's finding the small moments of joy in our lives every single day, building on those, and having more positive experiences. Matter of fact, a researcher by the name of Barbara Fredrickson found that if you have 3 positive experiences to 1 negative, because the negatives will still be there, 3-to-1 ratio, that you will begin to spiral up in your sense of happiness and well-being. This one's easy. You just take 15 seconds several times a day. Stop and savor. I guess it's that old phrase, stop and smell the roses, right? Okay, here's one that's really, really cool. This exercise is called 3 Good Things. It's simple to do, and here's how it works. Once a day for a week. Takes you about 10 minutes at most. Usually at the end of the day, get out a piece of paper and a pen and think about what are 3 good things that happened to me in the last 24 hours. And it could be little things. It could be I saw a beautiful sunrise when I got up this morning. A coworker gave me a nice compliment. Somebody did me a favor. I did a favor for somebody else. Whatever it is, but you go, hey, that made me feel good. So you write down 3 of those things. And by the way, it is important to write them down. Just thinking about them, you don't get nearly the impact. So you write them down, and here's what happened, and here's how it made me feel, and here's who said what, and then the easiest way is just what happened, how did it make me feel, how does it make me feel now, as I reflect on it. You do that every day, about 10 minutes for 1 week. Research would suggest strongly that for many people, doing that little exercise will decrease anxiety, it will decrease depression, it will increase your sense of well-being, and the coolest thing, just that 1 week, the impact lasts for months. Well, Gary, why does the impact last for months? That doesn't sound like much. Because you're training your brain to start seeing the positives that you might otherwise miss. Even if you stop doing the exercise, you're going to start noticing all the good things around you. And a lot of people keep doing it because it feels so good. So 3 good things. An exercise that I highly recommend. It's a fantastic exercise. Another thing you can do is practice compassion. Compassion is what you feel when you see another human being in distress and that desire you have to try to help them. If somebody's in distress and they're suffering and you want to help. Think about the last time you were in a funk. Maybe you were feeling stressed or down yourself, and then you get a call from your friend. They're in a hospital, their kid just got rushed to the hospital, and they need to pick up the kids from school. Boom, you jump into action, right? You want to help. And when you do that and the crisis has passed, you notice, hey, I'm not in a funk anymore. So showing compassion for other people, the Dalai Lama put it like this. He said, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. And if you want to be happy, practice compassion. Compassion is something that is sort of a natural part of our being, but it can get covered up. They've done these studies with little toddlers where the toddlers seem much happier to give a treat to somebody else than they are receiving a treat themselves. And like I said, if you really want to buffer yourself against stress, you take the focus off of yourself. In other words, you take the focus off the own hole in your own life and say, how can I fill that hole for somebody else? Now, there's different techniques for doing this. One is just being aware of it, having a conscious intention to do it, look around and say, how can I help? Then you can get a little bit more formal. There's an exercise called random acts of kindness. But again, research-based shows it will help you improve your compassion skills over time, and it will have all these positive effects we've been talking about. The way it works is, ideally, what you do is 5 small acts, say 1 day a week. 5 small acts or 1 big act. And it's important that you have variety. You don't keep doing the same things over and over for the same people. So, and they can be little things. I'm going through the drive-thru at a restaurant, and I say, hey, I'm going to pay for the person behind me. Or somebody needs you to run an errand for them because they're stuck, the babysitter didn't show up, sure, I can jump in and do that. Whatever it is, you make a conscious intention to do those 5 things. And then at the end of the day, or 1 big thing, maybe you spend the whole day helping somebody clean up their yard or something like that. At the end of the day, you write down what you did and how it made you feel. And again, we are now reinforcing the positive structures in our life. So practicing compassion is so important. And there's many, many different ways to do it. I'm just giving you a few ideas. By the way, there's literature on this stuff. At the end of my presentation, I'll have a slide with some of my favorite go-to websites or resources on this stuff. And it'll be up on IBTM's website afterwards. And so you can go look those things up. I don't want you to forget self-compassion. Oh, my goodness. Folks, we all have this little voice, you know that little voice in the back of your head that is telling you, uh-oh, you screwed up. You didn't do that right. Oh, no, they're going to be mad at you. Not my fault. That little voice that is very, very critical. Now, in fact, we have a voice in our head, most of us, that is, we say stuff to ourselves we would never, ever say to anybody else, but we say it to ourselves. And that's not exactly helping with our stress. The essence of self-compassion is fundamentally you treat yourself like you would treat your best friend. Now, there's a woman by the name of Kristen Neff. She's done a lot of the research in this area. And compassion basically has 3 different steps to it. Self-compassion. 1, you recognize that you're feeling something. You recognize you're beating yourself up, and you label the feeling. So I started at the beginning of this thing. The stock market here in the U.S. is going crazy, and so I sold some stocks, and I felt really good. A couple of days later, I bought back into the market, and I go, oh, my gosh, what a mistake. And I started beating myself up. I caught myself. I said, Gary, I heard that little voice. Okay, I'm angry at myself right now because I feel stupid. All right, 2nd step. Take comfort in our common humanity. Gary, you're not the only one to make a mistake like this. These are difficult times. You're doing the best you can. Everybody's doing the best they can. And you've got to have a little more patience during this time, more patience with yourself, more patience with other people. And that's the 3rd step. You talk to yourself. What would you say to a really good friend who made the same mistake or made the same error or is feeling the same way? Whatever you would tell them, tell yourself. For those of you who like to meditate, excuse me, there's some wonderful self-compassion meditations on this stuff too. Okay, so compassion, self-compassion. I told you I'm covering a lot of stuff here, so I hope you're taking notes. You'll be able to go back through the slides. But I want to give you as much as I can and leave room for questions. The next practice that I want to share with you, medium-term strategy, is for many people one of the most powerful. And by the way, this isn't true for everybody. Like gratitude is very, very powerful, but it works a little bit differently. We got people from all different countries and different cultures. And I'll say a lot of the research on gratitude has been from more Western countries. And here's the concept. To me, it's the essence of the donut principle. Gratitude is being thankful for what you have, not for what you don't. It's being thankful for the gifts you have been given. It's for the good things in your life that weren't because of you, but they were because of some other force of nature or God or whatever your religious beliefs might be, or some other teacher or mentor or friend. And when you begin to practice gratitude, again, it helps you see the greater positivity in life. It helps you move beyond your own hole, and it can bring a sense of peace. Two really easy techniques I want to share with you on gratitude. Many people like to keep a gratitude journal. And a gratitude journal is where you simply write down what you're grateful for and why. And research would suggest that for most people, again, this is all personal, so you do what works for you, but for most people, doing it once or twice a week. Some people do it every single day, but anything we do every day, we begin to make it a habit and it has much less power. But anyhow, 1 or 2 times a week, you write down the things you're grateful for. And you don't just go through the motions. You don't just like make a list. Matter of fact, you can start off with an intention. I'm going to do this because I want to feel happier. What is it I'm really grateful for in my life? Writing at a deeper level than a broader level. So rather than making a 10-point bullet list and moving on, write 2 or 3 things and write deeply about why you're grateful for those things. In general, focus on being grateful for people over things. You can certainly be grateful for your homes or where you live, your apartments and flats and so on. But this has a more powerful effect if in general you focus more on the people in your life. And one other kind of cool way you can do gratitude is kind of do it in reverse by subtraction. I'm grateful that, this didn't happen in my life. Or I'm grateful, man, if that had happened, that would have been awful. So you can be grateful what you've avoided in your life to give you what you have. Gratitude journal, and another really powerful one is called the gratitude letter. This one, you think about somebody who's done something for you in your life, maybe in the past, maybe even currently, mentor, teacher, boss, friend, who they really were there for you and made a difference in your life. And maybe you thanked them, or maybe you haven't, or maybe it's been a long time, but you sit down, you write a 1-page letter, and you share with them all the things they did and how it impacted you and the difference it's made in your life. And even better, if they're comfortable and you are, read the letter to them. Oh my goodness. I've had people come back and say, Gary, we had people do that exercise and family reconciliation happened, broken relationships from years ago. I can't promise that'll happen if you do it, but I can promise that if you do these things on a regular basis, some of this stuff is going to begin to stick and spiral you up. Summary of the midterm strategies. We've covered 3 good things. We covered savoring, compassion, gratitude. I'm scratching the surface on these things, folks. There's a lot more to do on these, but hopefully this gives you enough information to point you in the right direction. Okay, now let's cover long-term strategies before we go into a little bit about leadership, before we start taking questions. Long-term strategies, the time on these things are variable, but it's ongoing. It's taking a little bit longer perspective. That's one of the ways I just get through this whole thing now. I say, oh my gosh, we got to stay at home for 2 or 3 months like here in the States. Well, Gary, on the big scheme of things, 2 or 3 months in your life is really nothing. But there's strategies you can employ. Here, to me, is the essence. Most of the time when I'm doing live events, I'm speaking on change and leadership and finding the opportunity that change always creates. And the message that I'm sharing with you about that, and a lot of what I'm sharing with you today, yeah, I'm a psychologist. Yeah, I got a lot of years of experience, but it began when I went through the toughest change in my life. And afterwards, 20 years later, I wrote my first book called The Ring and the Rubble. The ring is a metaphor. It's the golden ring of opportunity and change. The rubble the pain, the anxiety, sometimes the anger, the fear in change. And what I learned by what I went through, there's always a ring in the rubble. No matter how bad it seems, there is always an opportunity. My change, real quick, our first child was born deathly ill. He had a really, really messed up heart. And 2 days into his life, I found myself sitting in a waiting room, literally waiting for the doctors to come tell me that he had passed away. And I was beating myself up. How could you? You're a father. You got to protect your kid. And everything that I share in my messages when I'm out on the road and what I'm sharing with you right now was born in that waiting room. Because it hit me and said, Gary, you can't control if he lives or dies. What can you control is loving your child. And I calmed down, and I went down to where I could see the doctors working on my son, and I sent them all the love that I could. And a few days later, my mom said to me, Gary, this is Christmas time. It has to be the worst Christmas of your life. And I thought about it. I said, Mom, this was the best Christmas of my life. I've never had a child before. Was I scared? Of course. Was I upset? But the love was bigger. Change always creates opportunities. There's a lot of business examples of that as well. You know, I got thinking about it. You know, some of these are my opportunities. What are your opportunities right now? I told you I'm reconnecting with old friends. This is a great time to pause and reflect on your career and what really matters. And we're always saying, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. Well, now we have some time. Now we have some time to sit back and say, what really matters in my life? Am I doing the things that matter? Am I helping other people? Am I doing the things that brings me happy? I can't wait for the articles we're going to read in 6 months about all the different ways work is getting reinvented right now. Look at us. We are in the events industry, and none of us can go to work. We can't travel, and yet here we are. We are all at an event thanks to IBTM. So this is a wonderful chance to kind of find new and efficient ways to get things done. Hey, and for me, it's an opportunity for me to spend more time with my wife. I'm not quite sure how she feels about that, but I'm getting something out of it. I enjoy that. So what are your opportunities? Here's a summary of what we talked about, long-term strategies. This is the time to pause, reflect on your life, where you're headed. I remember one of my clients was stuck in a really, really bad marriage, one of these executives that I coached, because I do that when I'm not speaking, and stuck in an abusive marriage, horrible stuff, and she just couldn't get herself out of it. She was in a plane over the Atlantic Ocean when 9/11 hit. And she knew that plane might not ever land. She said, if this plane lands, I'm not going to continue my life the way that it was. And she didn't. She went back and made changes and got out of that marriage and went on to a much happier life. Focus on your purpose and your values. And ladies and gentlemen, the most important thing for long-term emotional health and physical health, the research strongly suggests, is the nature of our relationships. The stronger our relationships, the stronger our emotional buffering against stress and anxiety and the hole in the donut, and the greater our physical health as well. Those are some things. I know I went quickly, but I wanted to get the stuff out there. You can go back and look at the notes. You can reach out to me. I'll encourage you to reach out to me on LinkedIn and so on. But those are the things you can do to take back control from the stuff we're going through now. Okay, for the next few minutes, I want to cover leadership, because that's another area that I spend a lot of time talking about, and I promised that I would share with you today. Because now some of you go, oh, well, okay, I don't have to pay attention to this. I'm not a leader. I'm not a CEO. I'm not a director. No. Everyone has a chance to be a leader. You know what makes a leader? It's not your title. It's not how much money you make. It's not even what you do. It's who you are and whether or not people choose to follow you. If people follow you, you're a leader. And leaders have positive impacts on people's life, unless they're really bad leaders, whole nother set of people, but they can get people following them too. But if you want to have a positive impact on the world, let me give you a few ideas how you can. Leadership always starts with managing yourself. If you aren't aware of what you're thinking and feeling and doing, and if you're not able to control your own behavior to a certain degree, you don't have a prayer of being an effective leader, because you're going to be bouncing around like everybody else, particularly during a time like this. How do you manage yourself? Many of the things I just shared with you are ways to start. Mindfulness, meditation, things that you can look into. But you always start with managing yourself. We just covered that quite a bit. Then, what do leaders do in a crisis? It's been my pleasure for the last 30 years to travel the globe, speaking for organizations and working one-on-one with their executives. And I've learned from them. These are the things really good leaders do. No matter your title, everybody can do this. Set the tone, share the information, and connect with people at a human level. Let's quickly run through each of those in turn. When everybody's running around and going crazy, leaders are in control of themselves. So when everybody else is speeding up because they're freaked out, leaders slow down. They take a deep breath. They make eye contact with people. They speak calmly, clearly, and confidently about what's going on because they know, and this is true, emotions are contagious. The virus is very contagious. Emotions are very contagious. And think about it. If you're on a team and you're working in the office or you get on these calls, Zoom calls, and one person is consistently in a bad mood, that can easily spread across the team. And if you are in a formal position of leadership, the impact is even stronger. That's why it's important that you manage yourself and in a crisis. And this is true in general of all leadership. When everybody else is speeding up, in a crisis, leaders slow down. And times are good, things are normal. Sometimes the leader's got to speed things up because everybody's too comfortable. But this is what they do in a crisis. Sharing information is key. And first and always, leaders tell the truth. They tell people what they know. They tell people what they don't know. They don't make false promises, but they do say what they think a realistic outcome is because human beings can handle the truth. What they can't handle is somebody lying to them or somebody telling them one thing one day and another thing the next. So leaders always tell the truth. And when you're going through something like this, you have to share information with people a lot more frequently than you normally would. That's because without information, there's a blank there, and our minds, as human beings, because of the way our brains work, will fill that blank in with negatives. Oh my gosh, they're not saying anything. We're all going to get laid off. Oh my gosh, we're going to go out of business. And if you're not giving them a constant stream of information, what you know, what you don't know, delivering it calmly, confidently, that will help calm people down. Information is like oxygen in times like this. Without it, people begin to feel like they can't breathe. But when you give them the information and you say, here's the information, here's what's going on, and here's the plan, and you share that regularly, a lot more than you normally would, that helps. And finally, during a time of crisis, leaders connect with other people. And one of the phrases I use to summarize this is connections before transactions. And this is true for me all the time in business. I'm reminded of one of my clients, a senior executive at a professional services firm, and he finally got a lunch with this chief financial officer that he'd been trying to get a lunch with forever to explore business opportunities, and she was really tough to get a hold of, and he finally did. And they sat down at lunch, and early on in the lunch, they got to know each other a little bit. They discovered both of their kids played soccer, or if you're in Latin America, football. And they started talking about that, and they kind of got into it. And to his horror, almost an hour later, he realized the lunch is almost over. We've done nothing but talk about soccer. And that little voice, he starts beating himself up. I can't believe it. You got this opportunity. You wasted it. However, when the lunch ended, this executive, who was really hard to get a hold of, she stood up, she shook his hand, and she said, thank you. She goes, that's the best business lunch I've had in a long time. I bet transactions followed the connection. And crisis gives you an opportunity to make those kind of connections. One time, folks, I was ready to give a speech for a client, and the night before, when I'm in my room, I found out one of their executives, tragically, had died that day in the meeting. And we got together, and they said, what should we do? And I said, well, clearly, I'm not going to do what I was going to do, but I am a clinical psychologist. I've helped people deal with grieving before. Would you like me to kind of facilitate a little coming together and mourning together and remembrance? And that's what we did the next day. A year later, they called me back, and I've never felt such warmth amongst a group with themselves, towards me, because when your brain is on heightened crisis mode, it also remembers much more. So if you're the person who's reaching out to people, not just on the business side of things, but saying, hey, how you doing? How's your family doing? If there's anything that I can do for you, if you're there for them now, they will be there for you then. So, summary of leading through crisis: set the tone, by managing yourself. That's true, crisis or no. Next one, tell the truth. That's true, crisis or no. And share accurate information. You always want to do that, but in a crisis, you do it way more because things change so fast. And you just, again, you tell them what you know. You don't have to make stuff up. And if you don't know something, say, I don't know, but I'll let you know when I find out. And this is actually a tremendous opportunity to connect at a deeper level, at a human being level, because people, their needs are up right now. And when you do that, you build stronger, trust-based relationships with your clients. So that covers what we've talked about. If I summarize all of that for you before we go into some Q&A, if I summarize all of that for you, it's the big points are focus on what you can control and the things that will be more positive for you in your life, the donut principle versus that whole. This is a great time to pause and reflect. When you get a little quiet time, and since we're at home a lot more, most of us, you'll have a little more time to pause and reflect and say, am I really doing what I want to do? Is our business really headed in the right direction? Maybe there's a different way we could do things. And above all, connect more with the people you love that will support you, that will support them, the people who matter to you most at work and at home. I said, I believe in my little video when I introduced myself a couple of weeks ago is we are all in this together, and together we're going to get through it. And I hope today that some of the things I've shared have given you a few ideas of what you can do to make this change just a little bit easier. Because change is hard because it's hard, but that doesn't mean we're out of control. So thank you very much for all of that. We've got about 15 minutes left. I'm going to start taking any questions that you might have. Begin to write those in. I should have told you at the beginning. Write in your questions, and the people who will be monitoring the questions and that sort of thing. My contact information is on there, my website, or please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to be a resource to you to help or listen any way I possibly can. So begin to come into the questions. I'm going to begin to take a look at the questions and give you what they are and give you my sense of an answer. First question is, working from home, of course, first question, working from home sometimes feel a bit monotonous. What do you suggest to keep you motivated when you get bored or distracted and anxious about what's going on? Okay, great question. A couple of things that I'd recommend is one, try to find some sort of positive goal for yourself that you won't get so bored, or even if you are bored at work, now I know when I get done with this, I'm going to go read that book, or I'm going to go write that letter, or I'm going to go get that run. So if you have some sort of positive goal and you're not just reacting to what's going on, particularly the part about the anxiety, you're getting anxious, practice these things I talked about, and have a positive goal to work towards. And if you're feeling anxiety in the moment, a great technique is simple. Usually when we're getting anxious, our muscles are tightening up, and we are not really breathing as we should. We're breathing more rapid and shallow. So when you feel yourself getting anxious, stop what you're doing, put your arms down, close your eyes, take a nice deep breath, hold it, and do that 2 or 3 times. Breathing gets the oxygen into your system, telling yourself, take a moment, just take a minute to do that. I call those mental showers. You're beginning to feel all yucky and ucky. Wait a minute, I need a mental shower. Stop for a moment, close my eyes. And if you can't close your eyes, if you're on a call and people are watching you, you can still just sit there. People don't need to know you're taking nice deep breaths. There's also a technique called stop. When you catch yourself getting anxious and then you hear yourself saying stuff to you, oh, you screwed that, you messed that up. Stop. You stop, pause, take a deep breath, and go on. So those are just some ideas. And explore. This is the time to try something new. Hey, if I'm bored, maybe I'm kind of going through the same routine. Maybe you're accepting, I got to try to get back to normal. That's what a lot of people say. I can't wait till we get back to normal. I say, wait a minute, why would we want to go back to normal? Why wouldn't we want to go back to something better? And we can if we stop and pause and think about it. So those are a couple of ideas. Next question. Really interesting talk so far. Thank you very much. What advice would you give to people to help them get started with these techniques when work and home life is busy? I found it hard to focus on self-care, so any tips on how to push myself to do this would be a huge tip. First tip, don't push yourself. Love yourself. Don't beat yourself up for not doing it. Congratulate yourself for when you do it. For example, with that exercise I just gave, do that a couple times a day. Breathe in and breathe out. That's a little self-care that you did just then. Maybe you do it for 2 minutes. You really want to start small with these things. I think one of the things that gets us in trouble, a lot of us on these kinds of things have an all or nothing mentality. You know, the all or nothing mentality. I got to do it all. I got to do it all. Or man. And when you have an all or nothing mentality, usually you end up with nothing because nobody can stay to those. So I prefer a all or something mentality. I'm going to do something for myself. I might not have gotten the run in like I wanted to, but I'll walk around the living room if it's raining. I might just take 5 minutes out and call a friend, show some compassion. So the most important part that I'm picking up on your question there is the huge help would be don't push yourself. Be gentle with yourself. It's hard because it's hard. There are a lot of stresses. Everything I'm saying doesn't mean all that other stuff isn't going on and blah-de-da. No, we all have a lot of stressors. But just take the little steps that you can do, savor. You know, you can be sitting there bored to death on a call and look around and see something that you enjoy. Maybe you have a flower on your table or you see your kids playing in the other room. Just take a moment to let that sink in. Those are some of the things that you can do. Next question is, how can you help calm someone else down? I really like the way you phrased that question is, you can help them perhaps, but you can't make them. You know, some people say, how do I make somebody else calm down? You can't. How do I make somebody else happy? You can't. They're in control of their lives. But to answer your question, how can you help someone else calm down? The main thing you can do is role model it for them. Normally, if they're all uptight, they need somebody to listen. So rather than jumping in and giving them a whole bunch of suggestions, listen. Just say, hey, sounds like you're really uptight. Tell me what's going on. And let them rattle off what's going on. And don't immediately jump in to try to fix it. Just let them express and then show empathy. That's part of compassion. You show empathy. Wow, sounds like you're really uptight. I can understand. You got a lot going on. Man, I understand. And then maybe, yeah, I got a lot going on. We all do. And you relate to them that way. So you don't try to make them calm down. You don't tell them they should. You don't give them all these techniques. You might suggest, hey, one of the things I did that helped me is I read this book or I watched this presentation or whatever it is, but you just suggest what you've done. But mostly you're listening, showing care and compassion. And sometimes people just are going to be in pain and there's nothing you can do. I've learned that when people are really, really upset, they've lost a loved one or whatever, what they really need is somebody just to be with them. Don't try to do, just be. And another question here that I see is, how can we have your great presentation? Well, again, thank you so much for the compliment. I'm glad it sounds like you got some value. It will be up on IBTM's website, the presentation and this webinar, a recording of it. I'm not sure how long it will take until it pops up there, but you'll be able to access it there. I'm happy to share. I want to help as many people as I can. When this thing kicked in, I said, Gary, this is your time. I've been, ever since Who Moved My Cheese came out, I gave over 100 talks on that book, and I learned a lot about change. And then since then, I've given another 200 talks on, and read books, write books, and read books. So this is what I love to do. So, connect with me on LinkedIn. If you have any particular questions, please connect with me. You got my website, my email. There's a contact form there. You can contact me there. I'll try to help you as you can, but those are some of the places you can get resources. And let's see if we have any other questions. I think that might be it. Yeah, those are all the other questions. So let me wrap up by saying change is hard because it's hard. You have already taken the first step for self-care by listening to this webinar. And I don't want you to push or put pressure on yourself, but take 1 or 2 or 3 things, try them a little bit at a time. If they don't work, try something else. And over time, remember, this is an over time process. You will gradually spiral up. And then Here's the cool thing is when our minds are calm and we're not so uptight, we literally see more. So if we're going to reinvent our businesses right now or reinvent our business model, like here I am, this thing came along, I'm a speaker, there goes all my events. Well, here I am at an event and I'm speaking. And I really quickly realized, I said, Gary, well, you're going to have to do things a little bit differently. You're going to have to put the word out there. You have to do webinars. And if you're going to do webinars, you better get the right technology and so on. So those are some of my final words. But yeah, another question just popped in, and let me hit that before. And any others, we still got just a couple minutes if anybody has any others. The current COVID-19 situation is constantly evolving and ambiguous. There's so much information in the news that it can sometimes feel overwhelming. Are there any special techniques for these types of situations? The only reason I'm chuckling is because, yeah, avoid the news. Don't be blind. Know what's going on. But like I said, for myself, I've learned I love to watch the news normally, read about it. I consume 5% of what I did before. I go online, I'll look at the stories, I'll scan the headlines, get a sense of what's going on. My wife, and use humor. I haven't even gotten into humor, but humor is a wonderful way that when you're in a crisis or you're always feeling stressed, humor puts some perspective on some things. It relaxes the body and it opens the mind. And, my wife and I, the way we have a sense of humor between the two of us, and we'll get up and say, have you checked the news yet this morning? Yeah. Anything new? No, we're all going to die. Okay, thanks. And we move on because that basically is our code for, yeah, it's still really pretty bad out there. I'm going to continue on. And then you also, again, rather than focusing on your own fears, your own concerns, one of the things I've been learning to practice is called loving kindness meditation. And loving kindness meditation is exactly what you think it might be. And meditation, people get scared. All that means is you're focusing in on something and you get yourself into a relaxed state. And in loving kindness meditation, you focus on the love you have in your heart and how you can share that with maybe a person who you know who's stressful, and you think about sharing it with them. And then you expand it and think about sharing it with strangers. And then you can expand it thinking about the full world. And when you get done doing a loving kindness meditation, you're not going to feel nearly as overwhelmed. So avoid the news. Avoid the news. Here's another question. Greetings from Berlin, Germany. I find it hard to separate work from private emails and faxes and all that kind of stuff now that the location is the same. Do you have any tips for these kinds of situations? And yes, I do. Frankly, I've been working from home. I started working from home when I started working for myself in the mid-90s. And I find it's important. I remember when I first started working from home, my wife said, at the end of the day, I was sitting there at my desk, she goes, when are you coming home? I say, honey, what are you talking about? I've been home all day. She goes, no, when are you coming home? I said, what do you mean? She goes, me and the kids are about to have dinner. When are you coming home? And I go, oh, I learned if I'm going to work from home, I have to have a place. That's where I work. And I have to set a schedule. And I have to say, this is not the time to check my emails. This is the time to prepare my webinar. And I discipline myself. Maybe I turn off the notifications. So I restrict my access to email. And I say, between these hours, some people say it's important that if you're going to work from home, you get up, you get dressed like you're going to work, so your body and mind get all the same cues, and you go to work and in a place where the least amount of distractions, and then schedule in breaks. Take regular breaks. Okay, I'm leaving work now. I'm going to go into the kitchen, and I'm going to take 10 minutes to see how my partner is doing. I'm going to see how his or her day is going. Or I'm going to just take 10 minutes to close my eyes and just rest. So you have to mentally separate, even though you're in the same physical space, you have to mentally separate the activities and mentally separate the time that you spend, and then have a set time. I had one of my clients, he's working harder now than he ever did. And I said, look, man, you're in charge of that. He goes, Gary, I don't have enough time. I said, well, you great. Last week he said, Gary, that was so. He went back to exercising. I'm going to stop working at 7 o'clock every night and so on. Those are just a few tips. And I think we're just about at our wrap-up time. So one other question, there's an alternative of reading the gratitude letter to people. That might be too sensitive for some. You're exactly right. And it could lead to a lot of crying emotions, maybe too much. I love some emotional moments, but some people might crash down. You're exactly right. You got to use practical sense in this thing. If you write the letter, And you go, oh my goodness, if I read to that person, that would be a mess. Then the other thing you can kind of do, though, is maybe explore a little bit. Is that really true, or am I maybe just sort of avoiding something? But yeah, if something doesn't feel right, don't do it. I mean, even writing the gratitude letter might not feel right. But if you go, okay, adapt it. Here's the bottom line. I'm giving you general parameters. Take them and adapt them in a way that works for you. This is a very personal process. This is not a one-size-fits-all process. I'm giving you the overall possibilities, touching base on some of those. You take it and do. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Folks, thank you very much. I appreciate you tuning in. Just to let you know, when you do go online, I have a final slide here and that has some of my favorite resources where you say, I want to learn more about meditation, or I want to learn more about gratitude, or any of these things. These are some of my favorite websites, and you can take a screenshot of it now, or it'll be up on IBTM's website. I want to thank all of you for joining, participating. I particularly want to thank Michael and Hannah and all the wonderful people at IBTM for giving me this opportunity. Practicing what I preach, I'm very grateful. I hope you all got something from it. Take care. Thank you much.